So a while ago, someone asked me to do a response to this video, touted in the title as one of the best sermon I've ever heard, in which Francis Chan uses a rope to illustrate life and how we should set our priorities. It's an interesting example of how even the feel-good sounding sermons of apparently unassuming preachers can be just as insidious as the in-your-face aggression of their more obviously bombastic counterparts, and, well, let's just watch and see.
There's a lot of things I like here in Simi Valley. There's a lot of things I like in Southern California. There's a lot of things about this home that I'm building for myself that I want to look back on. Do I want to give that up? Do I want to give that up? Well, that looks kind of appealing.
Yes, and that's all very, very healthy. Trying to build up a home and possessions for the sake of your family's security, and yes, to some extent, comfort, is just a responsible thing to do. And from time to time, looking at it all and deciding what you want to keep or give up can be equally important. Sometimes our pursuit of physical possessions can get away from us, and we suddenly look back and realize we've been chasing things just to chase things, in which case we really should reset our priorities before too much of life gets away from us. So far, this sounds like decent advice.
Paul goes, man, I can't do that. I've got to keep looking forward. Because the moment I look back, I'm going to lose this race.
Oh, so it was just a build-up to that thing Paul said in the Bible. Awesome. Before we continue, I want to apologize for the long break between videos. I'm trying to keep up at least an every 3-week or so upload schedule, which, yeah, sucks in and of itself, but my kids were recently exposed to a positive COVID case, and long story short, we all ended up negative, but I had to scramble to temporarily find a place to quarantine with them in isolation. It was a wild time, but it's over and we're fine, and now things are back to normal enough that we can watch Francis Chan talk about life priorities.
Because I'm like a runner. All I think about is that finish line. And all I think about is, man, one moment I'm going to see Jesus and I'm going to spend my life preparing for that moment. I want to cross that line. I want to get my reward. It's all about that.
If you're at all familiar with Christianity, I think the point of this sermon is already becoming clear to you. This is about ignoring concerns of the world, to some extent or another insinuating that you should cast aside responsible adult decision-making, and focusing everything on getting to heaven. There's a lot that's horribly wrong with this. But here I just wanted to focus on one core point that Francis makes explicitly clear. In his own words, this is all about getting your reward. Now yes, you have to defer current earthly gratification to get it, and the pursuit is tied to religion and Jesus and stuff, so the whole thing has some feel of virtue to it, but when we consider the core point of what he's suggesting you do, and the priorities he's asking you to set, this is actually pretty gross. Just think about it. If you focus all your time and energy striving to reward yourself with a new boat, most people would see you as a selfish ass. Yet somehow if you do the same, striving to reward yourself with heaven or whatever, you're a great person. It's amazing how a religion that's supposed to be about character and regard for others can so brazenly dangle a bribe in front of its followers and tell them that's the entire point.
He goes, I don't look behind me, I look forward. I forget. The one thing I do, I forget what's behind me, and I'm just looking to the end. I mean, how many of us really think that way? How many of us live that way? Looking to the end.
As a former Christian, I'd say most actually don't. But the point is not that this is the fault of Christians, which I've heard far too many pastors say. The point is that if any live this way, then too many do. And the idea still seeps into the thinking of most believers by various degrees, at least slightly clouding their understanding of what they should be doing with their time and why.
You know what's interesting to me? This whole thing about forgetting what's behind and pressing on toward what's ahead. What does every counselor tell you to do? Look back. Let's go back to your past. What happened a few years ago? Oh yeah? Well then what happened when you were an adolescent? Let's talk about your early childhood. What happened there? Maybe some things in the womb. What happens? Was there distress? Did your mom have any?
Okay, now this is totally uncalled for. Whether you're a Christian, a questioner, a doubter, a new non-believer, or anybody else whose background might incline you to take Francis seriously to any degree, I can't emphasize enough. Do not let pastors like this make you feel guilty or stupid for getting responsible professional counseling when you need it. What his flippant little remark here does is childishly represent your choice as being between looking back and looking forward. If you're looking back, you're just obsessed with your past, nursing old hurts, probably being self-indulgent and making excuses for your behavior, and so on. Those of you who grew up fundamentalist probably get the flavor of what this sounds like. The alternative is to look forward, which at a glance can sound more constructive because you're putting on your big boy pants and taking action instead of sulking over your childhood. But this is dumb. Counseling is not just about obsessing over your past, and this is not a binary choice. To make good future decisions, you have to understand your past. I mean, come on. This is so obvious we use common catchphrases like, "Those who won't learn from history are doomed to repeat it," to describe it. And even the Bible is based on this premise, as it's largely composed of stories about the past meant to teach us about how to make good decisions in the future. So why not do the same by looking back at our own lives? It just seems obvious that we would. So for Francis here just to say that counseling looks at the past and Jesusing looks at the future, and then ridicule or shame sometimes vulnerable people who use counseling when they need it, is not only stupid but disgusting. Look, there's a reason pastors are at odds with professional counseling, and that's because the clergy had an undeserved monopoly on moral teaching and personal advice for centuries, and many feel threatened now that psychology provides an actual clinical alternative to whatever off-the-cuff thing that preachers of wildly varying qualifications simply assert over the pulpit. In short, psychologists are the dentists of the situation, where pastors are the true theologists. So don't let people bully you for getting actual qualified help just because they want to protect their half-assed monopoly. Oh, and little hint, when people have to make up ridiculous exaggerations like what happened in the womb, they probably don't have an actual point.
We're always going back, looking back, and Paul says, one thing I do, I forget what's back there, and I look forward. Is it true that there are certain things I do because of my past? Yeah. But there's a lot more that I do because of my future. You know, I do things, and we gotta focus on this, you guys. The world's gonna keep making you look at your past, and we gotta keep looking at the future. You look at your past, you're gonna get depressed, and you're gonna get stuck in your past. You look to your future.
I've noticed a strategy that a lot of manipulative, or okay, to be fair, maybe negligent, pastors use to give an artificial sense that Christianity has all the answers. First, they introduce an idea that actually has a kernel of truth to it. Second, they ignore all the nuance surrounding that core truth and reduce it to a generalization that's easy for the congregation to digest and gives them a very clear, simplified right or wrong answer that applies in every situation. From there, it's a simple matter of, third, saying that the world keeps choosing the obvious wrong answer, and fourth, claiming that Christian teaching provides the one right answer because nobody outside the religion ever managed to piece together the obvious conclusion the pastor has reached. Now yes, this last point sounds silly from the outside, but it actually appeals to something the congregation finds comforting, which is the suggestion that the world is lost and confused, and we here within the walls of Church X have the answer. In this case, our kernel of truth is that if you're too backward-focused, there's a danger you'll get stuck in the past. Now, there obviously is some truth in this, but how much you should focus on the past and to what extent you should move on and look to the future is where all the real nuance lies, right? Not only will the answer be complicated, but it will vary a lot person by person depending on their history and needs. But the complications inherent in reality don't provide easy answers, so that's where Francis glosses over reality with a simplified right or wrong answer, which is that looking back is flatly bad and looking forward is flatly better. Of course, he gives his passing acknowledgement of some reason for the former, but his assessment is clearly one-sided, and he just kind of blows by it and ignores it. From there, it's a simple matter of pegging the wrong answer on the world by saying it just wants you to look back, which is obviously a dumb generalization. Most even halfway intelligent people in the world already understand what he's saying about getting stuck in the past. We know it's not healthy, and we know you ultimately have to resolve your issues and move forward. So to say the world, and yes, I'm always going to enunciate it with that attitude, just wants you to look back, is willfully mischaracterizing a lot of perfectly intelligent, well-intentioned people who just don't happen to be Francis's brand of Christian. Then step 4 is to insinuate that Christianity is the one set of teachings that looks forward, an idea that can be made to sound superior if, again, you're simplifying everything. But to understand the future, You have to look back at the past to find ongoing patterns, since, you can't actually see the future. So you really can't even separate the two practices, much less say one is superior to the other. Thus, Francis's artificial dichotomy and ensuing teaching, ironically, amounts to a weird practice of what I could fairly call getting stuck in the future.
And go, man, what is that moment going to be like? See, my actions, a lot of the things I do is because I'm thinking about my future. And I'm thinking about that moment when I see Jesus, because I realize that everything I do is going to bring either reward or regret. It really is. I've got an extra $1,000. Okay, on that day, that future, when I see Jesus, what is going to bring reward and what's going to bring regret? I could buy a lot of fun things for myself with that $1,000, but on that day, Paul's saying, I'm just looking at that day, going on that day, maybe I just give it to the poor, because on that day, I'll be rewarded for it.
Ooh, that's rough. Here he's pretty straightforwardly suggesting that you should give it to the poor not out of compassion, but because you will eventually get a reward. Now yeah, he's not saying compassion shouldn't be a consideration, maybe even a major one. But what motivation does he keep harping on? That's kind of a big deal, and frankly he makes the poor sound like little more than a place to invest your money so you'll get a bigger return later. Also notice that this is another example of the four-step strategy I just talked about. He hits on a core truth, which is that while possessions serve a function, there are more important things in life. And if you spend all your time in material pursuits, you may one day look back and regret richer experiences in life and miss time with friends and family. This is obvious, and most people, even in the world, pretty much get it. But there is a bit of nuance here, and Francis, true to form, ignores it, boiling everything down to a simplified choice between greed and money, which he suggests is the only source of happiness the world can comprehend, and Christianity's promise of eternal reward, which he somehow treats as inexorably tied to virtues like charity and the deferral of immediate gratification.
Versus, we've all bought things we regret, right? You go, oh, that was a waste of money, that's a waste of money, that's a waste of money. Think about what we're going to say at the end when we stand before God. Are you going to regret the car you drove, regret the house you lived in, regret the clothes you wore, regret, just everything? What are you going to regret? What about your time and how you spent it? Are you going to go, oh, I'm so glad I watched 7,000 movies? Or are you going to regret, wow, I wasted all of that time down?
Oh, whoa, hold on. I thought we were only supposed to look forward instead of looking back. So why is he talking about what kinds of things you will and won't regret when you look back at your life? On one hand, he says that your coming reward in heaven is going to be so awesome that you should spend your entire life not caring what happened in your past, even in the middle of ongoing troubles when heaven's a distant possibility. But then on the other, he suggests you'll be worrying about wasted time at the very moment you're standing in front of God about to receive that reward. According to Chan's own narrative, is there any time you'd be less worried about your past? If an idea is so half-baked that it falls apart as you're in the process of explaining it, you might want to go back and rethink things.
It's about the future. Paul's going, man, what am I to look forward to at the end? I'm going to bring an illustration that, this is like the first illustration I did. It was 20 years ago, but I can't think of a better way to explain it.
How can you not have improved on the first analogy of your career after 20 years? Maybe the rope thing just got to the point so well there was no reason to reinvent the wheel, and so maybe I'm off base. But stagnant language usually goes hand in hand with stagnant ideas. So I'm not too surprised to hear an evangelical preacher's been using the same illustration to make the same point over a decades-long career.
I actually didn't use a rope back then. I used remember computer paper when it was all stuck together and it had the holes on the side that you had to peel off? Remember that? I remember getting a roll, and some of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, which is crazy to me. But because that was the best, and it never worked right because the rolling things.
Yeah, things that never work right are the best.
But I remember being a youth pastor, and I put that computer paper all the way around the room, and but I'm going to use a rope now because I can't find that computer paper. Imagine this rope. Okay, pretend this rope just goes on forever. Okay. Just imagination. Pretend it goes around the world a few times. It doesn't. It ends at the rock. But let's just imagine this thing goes on forever.
If there's one good thing this rope analogy illustrates, it's the role that imagination plays in Chan's point. He can show you a rope of a certain length, but then after that he must ask you to imagine that it continues to go on forever. In precisely the same way, we can all see that humans live out lives of a certain length, but after that he must ask us to imagine an existence that goes on forever. Keep this in mind when you hear him continue to suggest how you should set your priorities.
Now imagine that this rope is a timeline of your existence. You just exist forever. You see this red part? This would represent your time on earth. You've got a few short years here on earth, and then you've got all of eternity somewhere else. This is your existence. And what blows me away is some of you, all you think about is this red part.
Yep. He just said he's blown away by the fact that people focus on the part of their existence that they know exists instead of on the part he asks them to imagine. Let that sink in.
It's all you think about. You're consumed with this. You go, oh man, I can't wait till here. You know, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to save so I can really enjoy this part right here. And you're consumed with that, and you're thinking, oh man, am I going to get to travel? Am I going to eat well? Am I going to do this during this part? And I'm like, are you kidding me?
This is yet another one of those core truth things. Yeah, you shouldn't wear yourself to the bone all your life just working to enjoy retirement, and it's important to enjoy your working years, the time you have with your kids, and so on. But maybe, just maybe, if you zoom in on the red section of the rope, you know, the part of your existence that actually exists, you can intelligently view this as an issue of work-home life balance and understand the futility of chasing nothing but retirement. It's not like people won't get this concept if they don't contrast actual retirement with retirement to a magical farm in the sky.
What about this? What about this? What about all this stuff? It's crazy to me because the Bible teaches that what I do during this little red part determines how I'm going to exist for millions and millions and millions of years forever.
Yeah, but the Bible says a lot of things, doesn't it?
And so why would I spend this little red part trying to make myself as comfortable as possible, enjoying myself as much as I can? Paul says, look, I'm going to live my life for this mission. I'm going to spend my life, invest my life for this moment when I cross that finish line. See, I'm going to forget about all this stuff I could enjoy, and I'm not going to look around. I'm going to be like a runner just looking at that moment when I face God, because when I face Him, then I don't get this chance over again. We get one chance at this life on earth.
Yeah, we do only get one chance at life on earth, so we should take great care to use it to its full potential. And if we're going to do this, we need to intelligently assess what reality is and how our decisions might shape the experiences of ourselves and others. Simply supposing that we're going to exist for eternity and then structuring our entire lives around trying to prepare for that eternity is not constructive behavior. We could guess literally anything about what happens outside apparent reality and then guess literally anything else about how to act in response. But that's a reckless and irresponsible use of our entire lives. It's squandering our mortal and probably only existence following formulas meant to prepare us for something we have no good reason to think is going to happen. So why ever do this? Why not instead value the time you have on earth with your loved ones? Why not try to learn interesting things, grow as a person, pursue new challenges, and yes, within moderation, enjoy life's pleasures? Why not try to make life better for your children, your neighbors, the poor, and whoever else in your sphere can be bettered by your actions? Not because you hope that you will be rewarded after death, but because you want the one and only life that you know those people will experience to be a good one for them. Because you're a decent enough person to hope the generations that follow you will live good lives even though you won't be there to see it. This is all a responsible attempt to make good things happen according to the actual rules of reality. And you can do this with as much regard for other people as for yourself. See, Francis slips a common evangelical deception into this analogy by insinuating that the inherent goal of focusing on the red part of the rope is to make yourself as comfortable as possible and enjoy life as much as you can. But as I've just finished explaining, that doesn't have to be the purpose of a purely temporal life. As surely as Christians can want to live for the good of God, we can want to live for the good of other people. Ironically, it's the Christian vision of eternity, as articulated by Francis anyway, that's about bringing yourself comfort and enjoyment. You just plan your life to receive it after death instead of before. But I think we can do better than that. I think we can plan our lives more intelligently than that. And I think we can have more altruistic goals than that. And it's time for preachers like Francis Chan to stop shaming people for trying to make the one life they have healthy and fulfilling, and training them to think it's virtuous to throw it all away for the sake of an eternity that almost certainly doesn't exist. This program was made possible by a grant from Anthony Guthrie, John Adams, S.R. Foxley, Bob Generic, and Q, and by the generous support of viewers like you. If you'd like to join them in pledging to this channel, please find a link to the Prophet of Zod Patreon below.